Today is March the 20th, 2003, and we're in the home of Dean Henneberg, who lives at 505 Noble Street in Bellevue, Kansas. And Mr. Henneberg was born April the 22nd, 1923, so you're like 80 years old this year. I'm Dean Schoengert, and I'll be interviewing Mr. Henneberg today. What was life like for you just before you went in the service?
I was one of 7 children raised on a farm, and we had been through some hard times as a family. 7 kids to feed through the Depression and the drought years, and it was tough. I graduated from Wheaton High School in 1941, and through 41 and 42 I had a farm deferment working with my father, and in the middle of 1943 I told him that I wanted to go I was going to join the Navy when I got the corn out. Well, at that time we shucked the corn by hand. But long in November we finished shucking the corn, and the next day we went down to the draft board and told them that I was wanting to go in the Navy, and by the 10th of December I was in the Navy. I was sent to Farragut, Idaho for boot camp, and enjoyed that. It was all new country to me, beautiful country out there. They had us, of course we marched and drilled and all that kind of stuff. The first time I ever ate beans for breakfast, I'd say. But we got through it, kind of homesick, but came from a big family, and I got lots of mail all through my naval service. After I graduated from boot camp, came home for just a few days, and then went back to Seattle, Washington to go to fire control school. Now, when we speak of fire control, the fire control we're talking about is gunfire control. The firemen we took care of all the directors and the circuits on the guns, and even part of the phone lines. So and I was in fire control school right downtown middle Seattle on Lake Union. Best duty anybody could ever ask for, and I was there 16 weeks or something like that. And got to come home for a few days. Went back to Bremerton, Washington, to a receiving station, and hung around there for 3 weeks waiting to get a troop ship. They sent me to Adak, Alaska on a troop ship. Well, like everywhere else, you wait a few weeks or a day or two or whatever till they decide what they want to do with you. And I was assigned to a destroyer in Adak. And so I went aboard the doggone thing. And
What's the ADAC that you mentioned?
that's one of the Aleutian Islands. There was Adak and Hatu and another one.
Oh, okay.
And the Japs had invaded them, and they didn't invade Adak, I don't believe, but anyway, they were afraid the Japanese were going to come in there. But anyway, I went on that destroyer there, tied up and anchored. Darn if I didn't get seasick, tied up there in the harbor. And something I've battled all my life in the Navy with seasickness, and I like to tell my grandkids at one time I was seasick, homesick, and lovesick all at the same time, and I was sick. Yeah. But anyway, after we'd been, excuse me, in the Aleutians for a while, we came back to the States. I wasn't up there probably 2 months, and came back to Frisco with the ship for some overhaul. And after a short time there, whatever work they wanted to do, they sent us, we went to Hawaii. And there we did practice gun firing and any other Navy schools they could think of send you to. And from there we went on to the South Pacific, and let's see, that would have been 44, I guess. And then towards the end of 1944, there was a lot of action around the Philippines, and we were in on that. And then in March, I think this was either, can't remember, it was pre-Okinawa or pre-Iwo Jima that we were screening and were hit by a suicide plane and killed 26 or 7 guys and blew off 2 decks down to the main deck. And so of course we came back to the States for overhaul, and that's when I talked my wife into marrying me. Well, I think I had 2 weeks leave at the time, so we had to kind of push that along. And then darn if they didn't cancel part of my leave. Well, my dad had been kind of laid up, his shoulder bothering him, so he put his arm in the sling, and we went to Wamego to see Neville Larson to see if he couldn't get my leave extended. He was worked with the Red Cross, and you know, by darn, he got me 4 more days, and well, that was fine. Of course, when I got back to the ship, I took all kinds of kidding about getting extra leave to plant corn.
This suicide hit, was that a complete surprise, or
No,
had
we
you
were
been
shooting
warned?
at him.
I know, but you were warned about this might happen?
Oh yeah, it had been happening, and we'd shot
I
down
see.
several planes,
Uh-huh.
and just we just couldn't stop him.
Was he
So
coming in high or coming in low?
It came in low,
Uh-huh.
and well, that's the thing I remember about the Navy. You never got enough sleep, and when you're out in the forward areas, you were in general quarters at sunrise and sunset. Well, then you stood 4 hours watch every night. You stood 4 hours watch every day beyond that, and then tried to do your work. And for a country boy, I was used to going to bed at 8 o'clock and getting up at 5, but I didn't like interrupting my sleep.
They still don't.
So after you married, then you were back, and where did you go?
We went back to the South Pacific, and it wasn't shortly then they dropped the atomic bomb, and the war was over. We were in and out of Tokyo Bay at the time the peace treaty was signed, and after the peace treaty was signed, our ship was chosen as one of, I think it was another destroyer that escorted the Missouri back to the East Coast for Navy Day. And I think the Missouri went to Philadelphia, and the Kimberly went to Wilmington, Delaware. And after that, we took the Kimberly back down to Charleston, South Carolina, and put it in mothballs there. And I was discharged, I think, in December. Well, I got home the day before Christmas. The Kimberly was used again during the Korean War, and then was refitted and sold to the Republic of China. It's still going.
please explain how your duty as fire control
Well, I do need to tell you about that. On the highest part of the ship, there was a rangefinder and a pointer and trainer that could swivel it around and aim it like a gun. But all of those readings went to a computer, what we called a computer, and it was as long as this table and about this high and about yay wide. And all those readings went into that computer, and then there was a gyro compass down there and that sat there and spun like a top to take care of the roll and the pitch of the ship, and it went in there, and that's what aimed and directed all the 5-inch guns. Fascinating thing that the Navy figured that out. But
so you were always checking the equipment,
right,
and then during firing you also had to observe
yeah,
the
after we were hit, and we really didn't, I don't think we ever fired again at enemy. But we had dual 40 millimeters on, and after we were hit, when they came back to the States and refurnished it, they put on quad 40s. Well, they had a director up one deck above the quad 40s that we, the fire controlman, took care of it, and that was my station to handle that director. It had a radar sight in it, and you could track things, and then the gun was down below it, but it would follow that director. I used to enjoy the target practice, and it was fun, and the 5-inch shells, when they exploded up in the air for anti-aircraft, it was just a big old black puff of smoke, and you'd see a puff of smoke here and there. I enjoyed that. And the other thing I enjoyed about the Navy was when we'd track submarine, that little old ship, and it was classified as a small ship, had two 60,000 horsepower turbines in it, and it would fairly get out and go, and I enjoyed seeing the water boil up behind that thing.
when you first said fire control, I was thinking of burning fire.
Yeah, that's a common mistake.
But you're talking about the gun firing,
Yes.
and you're aiming the gun from the top.
Yeah.
From the top.
Here's where the fire
Let's
controlmen
get it here.
were up in this high here, and you can see a kind of radar thing there. Well, there was a guy in there to train it around, and a guy to elevate it to keep it on a target just like a gun. And there was a rangefinder in there, and the guy in there with good eyes would put a little old diamond right over the target so you got your range. Well, then that all went down into the plotting room where the computer was, and the gyro compass put the tilt of the church in it, and there was 5-inch guns on that destroyer, and they were all aimed from that director.
Well, that was all new to you as a
Oh,
Kansas
yeah.
boy, wasn't it?
It was an experience that was valuable to me, and beyond that, I didn't really get paid much in the service. But when I came
Remember
home,
how much it was?
no, I didn't think it was $50, but I was reading some information here from a buddy yesterday, and he thought maybe we got $50 a month. But beyond that, when I come home, and of course a young married man, I had to buy groceries and stuff, and I think we got nearly $100 a month for a year. And then after that, they started the GI school to teach me how to be a farmer. And I did that for 3 years, and I thought I got another $100 a month out of that for pretty near 3 years. So, you know, they tried to take care of us. Did a pretty good job. I've been in the VA hospital once for appendicitis, but outside of that, my father was in the Army in the First World War. My son was in the Navy during the Korean War, or the Vietnam War. And so, that's a picture of the ship that was taken
Okay.
from the Missouri during 1945.
Do you have any other pictures?
Oh, yeah, I don't know whether you can see this. There's a picture of the gun crew that I was on the director and the gun crew was on
That for one gun?
yes, there's a quad 40 we call it, a 4-barrel 40 millimeter.
Are you in the picture?
Yes I am. About right,
Right there in the middle, in the back row. My goodness, did you really develop a team feeling with your?
Well, yes, the gunner's mate, Bradford, was close friends, and a lot of the other guys they were ammunition handlers and stuff like that, you know, to keep the gun firing. And one other thing I always had to smile about, after I was on that director, we always had an officer there, and we both wore a set of headphones like this. Well, I was old salt, and he was just the ensign, you know, come out of school. And I heard the same thing coming over the phone that he did. He kept hollering at me. He'd say, Henneberg, 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 and I wasn't paying attention to him. I just ignored him. Pretty soon he pulled that earphone out about that far, said something to me, and then just let go of it. And I always remembered that. The next time he hollered at me, I paid attention.
Who decided what the target was?
Well, you had a gunnery officer, and I suppose the captain, but the target, you know, we did some shore bombardment, and we also had an aircraft, and another time we run across a floating mine, and you know, you've seen the pictures of the mines, prongs sticking out here and here and here. And so they thought, well, when this really war was over almost, they decided to have that gun I was on shoot 40 millimeters at it. So I manned a 40 millimeter director, and we fired. We couldn't get her to go off. So they decided, well, they'll run by it, and they had these what they called K guns with little old depth charges in them, and they'd run by it and throw one of them out there. Couldn't get her to go off, so they finally decided, well, we'll just forget it, it's a dud. And there's an officer firing away up on a bridge with a 45. Darn if he didn't set that off. You know, he hit one of them prongs just right. Oh, I felt bad. I think I fired at it like that, and then he shoots it with a 45.
How heavy would one of those shells be for the 5-inch guns?
Oh, they would weigh, I would guess 30 pounds, and then there was a keg of powder went behind them about like that. The 40 millimeters were about yay around and about yay long, but they were all one shell, like kind of like a rifle shell.
Did you have different kind of loads in the shells for different purposes, or was it all one?
No, we didn't. Now, it might be that the 5-inch would have had different for bombardment than they did for anti-aircraft, but Yeah, if I knew, I forgot, but with the difference in them.
What kind of range are we talking about in those?
The 5-inch shells would go, I'm gonna say 5 miles, you know, for bombardment. But you generally tried to get in close within, something, you'd get in close as you could to the harbor, you know, if you weren't being shot at.
You didn't have capability of shooting like at night or through fog,
yeah.
or you had to see the target, didn't you?
Well, they had some radar capability,
I see.
yeah, and we did fire at night. I remember that, but
Okay, what did you do when you got back?
well, when I got back, well, when I was home on leave just before I got out, I rented a farm out here north of Bellevue. I was born and bred a farmer, and I wanted to be a farmer, and we rented a farm north of Bellevue, and we farmed for 12 years, and then the opportunity came up to take the test for a rural mail carrier. So I took that and was fortunate enough to get the job, and we moved to Bellevue, and I carried the mail here at Bellevue for till from 58 till 73, and then 73 they added the Paxico route on to me, so I carried in both areas till I retired in 1984.
Where were you again when the war ended? Like, what kind of memory do you have of atomic bomb? And so forth?
Well, I remember, of course, we had been home after we were hit, and went back to that area about the time the war was ending. And of course, we were delighted to think they had something like that. We were in and out of Tokyo Harbor at the time the peace treaty was signed. I don't think we were there, because you always had to go get the mail and do all the kind of stuff, and you know. So, but we were in and out of Tokyo Harbor at the time that treaty was signed. And,
when the bomb fell, you were
well, we weren't close. You know, we
were at sea somewhere.
Well, yeah, we were probably in the Philippines somewhere yet. But
You got the news over the radio, or how?
well, you get communiques from the fleet every day about.
I see.
I've got a small article here on the memorial service we had for the guys that were killed when.
This was a kamikaze.
Yeah. %80 of the ships out there were hit. They had that many planes that 80% of them were hit with kamikaze.
Was that sort of approaching Okinawa?
Yeah, from Okinawa on till the end of the war.
This lists about 7 people killed and 20 or so missing in action.
Yeah.
Is that from one hit?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why would there be so many missing in action?
Well, they were blown overside, and just you see that plane came down on there with a 40mm gun right here, and the plane hit there, and there's a 5-inch gun, another one here, blew all that off clear down to the main deck, and there was a powder magazine underneath.
Oh.
And so most of the guys that, well, there were guys lost arms, the guys burned, but The ones that were missing were just gone, you know.
Uh-huh.
But, you know, I think about those guys a lot. But here's a thought I've got that's probably strike you as odd. But for them, it was over then. But for their folks, it wasn't over as long as they lived. That they missed their son, they missed the grandchildren, and the great grandchildren. You know, it'd be hard.
Well, thank you, Mr. Henneberg.
That's all right. Glad to do it.
Appreciate your service to your country and after and during.
Well, you know, the thing about young people, they don't think that anything's ever going to happen to them. And they can go out in the car and go 70, 80, 90 miles an hour and they don't worry about it. And that's kind of the way it is with the kids going into service. They know it could happen, but it ain't going to happen to them. But it does. A hard lesson to learn sometimes.
Well, thank you very much.
You bet.